Suppose you want to poke China. Who do you call? The answer is Nancy Pelosi. First, she enraged China by visiting Taiwan. Now she's enraging China by meeting the Dalai Lama. It's apparently her superpower. But jokes aside, she is quite good at it. Pelosi is part of a high-ranking US delegation. They landed in Dharamshala in India on Tuesday, and today they met the Dalai Lama. We told you about this visit yesterday. The delegation has both Democrats and Republicans. Their aim is to show solidarity with Tibetans. I would say Nancy Pelosi went a step ahead. She did not just show solidarity with Tibetans, she launched an all-out attack on Xi Jinping. Listen to this.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with his message of knowledge and tradition and compassion and purity of soul and love. He will live a long time and his legacy will live forever. But to you, President of China, you'll be gone and nobody will give you credit for anything.
Strong words there. Pelosi says history will remember the Dalai Lama, but it will erase Xi Jinping. China certainly won't like that, but I guess that's the point. This whole visit is about poking China, about putting the focus back on Tibet. It started earlier this year with a new bill. It was passed by the US Congress in February. And what does it say? That China must restart talks with Tibetan officials. Now, just to be clear, this law has no bearing in China. They will simply brush it aside. America cannot draft laws for China. But this move does reveal their priorities. That the Americans are focusing on Tibet again. And not just America. Most democracies are talking about Tibet again. The European Union is. Australia is. So why isn't India? New Delhi is better placed than other countries. It is the home of the Tibetan movement. The Dalai Lama lives here. The Tibetan government is based here. Yet there is a sort of ambivalence. Let's look at the history first. India and Tibet used to be neighbors for a long time. Back then, it was a separate kingdom, Tibet, sort of like a buffer between the two big civilizations of India and China. But that changed in 1950. China sent soldiers into Tibet. They annexed the whole region and made it a part of China. Now, this posed a challenge for India. Suddenly, the border with Tibet became the border with China. In 1954, New Delhi recognized China's move. It accepted that Tibet is part of China. But in 1959, the Dalai Lama fled to India. Jawaharlal Nehru was Prime Minister then. He gave asylum to the Dalai Lama and his followers, and they've been living here since. Which brings us to the present. India finds itself in a unique position. On the one hand, India accepts China's control over Tibet. On the other, India hosts a Tibetan government in exile. It may look like a tough position to be in, but it's also a blessing. New Delhi can use Tibet to put pressure on China. Just consider this US delegation. You can't have a visit like this without India's help on Indian soil. The question is, what should India do with this unique position? Prime Minister Modi started on a positive note. He invited many leaders for his inauguration in 2014. Among them was the Tibetan Prime Minister in exile. And it was seen as a message to China. But in 2019, there was no invite. In 2024, same thing, no invite for the Tibetans. But in between this, there was another positive signal. In 2021, Prime Minister Modi wished the Dalai Lama on his birthday. It was the first outreach from the Indian Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, to the Dalai Lama. It came after 7 years in office. Since then, it's become a tradition. The Dalai Lama's next birthday is on the 6th of July. I'm sure Modi will reach out again. He should. But this time, maybe the Prime Minister should go one step ahead. Instead of a tweet, maybe he should meet the Dalai Lama. It hasn't happened in a long time. The last such meeting was in the year 2010. That's when the Dalai Lama met then Indian Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. We say it's time for a repeat. China keeps claiming Indian territory as its own, so why shouldn't India poke back? Just look at New Delhi's policy on Taiwan. On paper, it's the one China policy, but India has slowly diluted it. After Modi won a third term in office, the Taiwanese president congratulated him. And guess what? Prime Minister Modi replied to him. If the Taiwan policy can be diluted, why not the Tibet policy? It's a question that India must think about. We are well placed to amplify the Tibetan movement globally, whether it's hosting conferences or inviting foreign delegations or including Tibet in India's diplomatic agenda. Morally, it's the right thing to do. Strategically, it's a good way to pressure China.